Over in Norway, a hospital there was having a big problem because too many people were in love. Apparently, every morning as the employees arrived for work, there was a huge traffic jam in front of the hospital. What was going on was that people were driving their spouses to the hospital to go to work. But before they would get out of the car and go into the hospital, they would lean over and give their spouse a kiss. But apparently, many of those kisses were not just a quick peck on the cheek. Instead, many of those kisses turned out to be these long, passionate embraces that went on for several minutes. And the whole time, the traffic would back up in front of the hospital. Well, finally, the hospital came up with a solution for that problem. Now they have 2 lanes of traffic leading up to the hospital entrance, complete with a kissing lane. And for those who are in a hurry, a non-kissing lane. The problems that love can cause. What is love? That's a question that people have probably been asking since the very beginning of time. But one of the problems we have in the English language is that we use that same word love to mean so many different things. For instance, we say that we love chocolate ice cream. When we see an elderly couple walking hand in hand along the beach together, we comment on how nice it is that they're still in love like that. In a movie, when a man and woman jump into bed together, we say that they are making love. Or when we talk about how Mother Teresa devoted her life to caring for the sick and dying people in the streets of Calcutta, India, we say that she did that because of love. In each of those cases, we're using that same word, love. But in each case, we mean something quite different by that word. When the New Testament was written, they didn't have quite that same problem. You see, in the Greek language, which was the language that the New Testament was originally written in, they had 3 main words for love. First, they had the word eros, which referred to a romantic kind of love. It's from that word, eros, that we get our word erotic. Second, they had the word philia, which referred to a brotherly or sisterly kind of love. The name of the city, Philadelphia, of course, means the city of brotherly love. And then third, they had the word agape, which referred to a pure kind of love, a self-giving, sacrificing kind of love. And it's that kind of love, that agape, that self-giving and sacrificing kind of love that Paul is talking about here in this passage in 1 Corinthians. It's that kind of love, that agape, self-giving, sacrificing kind of love that Paul is trying to get us to see as the kind of love that God wants us to show in our lives. The problem, though, is that for the most part, we know that we should love other people. For the most part, we know that in the Bible, like in this passage that we just heard from 1 Corinthians, that God wants us to show love for other people. But the problem is that so often we think about love, but then we allow opportunities to do love to pass us by. Some years ago, they conducted a kind of experiment on the campus of Princeton Seminary in New Jersey. The students who were studying to become ministers met with the people who were running the experiment one at a time in a certain building there on the campus. And each student was asked to prepare a brief, impromptu talk about the parable of the Good Samaritan. You know, the story that Jesus told about that badly injured man who was lying by the side of the road, but then two people just walked right by him and ignored him, until finally a lonely Samaritan passed that way, and then he stopped and cared for that injured man. The seminary students were then told to go to another building on the campus to give their talk. But what the researchers did was, along the sidewalk to that other building, they had someone laying by the side of the sidewalk, pretending to be injured, in order to see how many of those students would stop and help. And what they found was that when the students were told that they had a lot of time to get to the other building and that they didn't have to hurry, most of those students, some 63% of them, stopped and offered some kind of assistance. But when the students were told that they were running late and that they really needed to hurry, only about 10% of those students bothered to stop and help that person, even though most of those students had to quite literally step over the injured person to get to the building where they were going to give their talk about the parable of the Good Samaritan. All those students knew what their faith required. All of those students knew that they should have done what they could to care for that person. But for different reasons, they didn't. For different reasons, they allowed that opportunity to show love, to pass them by. So what exactly does it mean for us to do love? What does it mean for us to love other people? One time I heard someone tell about an experience they had in an airport one day. They were running late for their flight, but they were very hungry, and they knew that on the plane, all they would get would be a very small bag of peanuts. And so the person stopped on his way to the gate at a soft pretzel shop. And he said to the clerk, "I'd like one of your soft pretzels, please, but I don't want any butter on it." Well, when the clerk heard that, he got this confused look on his face and went back and talked to the fellow who was making the pretzels. And a minute or two later, the clerk came back out front and said, "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't sell pretzels like that." The customer said, I don't think you understand. All I want is that when the cook takes the pretzel out of the oven, instead of dipping it into the butter and handing it to me, I just want him to take it out of the oven and give it to me as it is. Well, again, the clerk went back to talk